Welcome to The Woolly Way, a podcast specifically for dairy shepherds. That is, folks wanting to raise sheep for the purpose of harvesting milk. I'm your host, Rachel Hess.
And I'm Liv Fox. We cover all things pertaining to raising dairy sheep here, like animal nutrition, housing, healthcare, management, feed banking, and even some butchery and fiber arts.
After all, if you raise dairy sheep, you are going to have wool, and if your operation is successful, you'll eventually have surplus land to decide what to do with.
Ethical animal husbandry is the focus here, as well as sustainable agriculture. We want to provide you with the information you need to start implementing your dairy sheep operation in the best way possible for you, your sheep, and the amazing world we live in.
So grab a nice cup of sheet milk and let's dive in.
Hi guys, welcome to the Woolly Way. This is our first or second episode now as me co-hosting Liv Fox, and I have Rachel here. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm good.
We were just chatting. There's a little more to the story behind that, but we won't delve into mom life on the podcast.
It's a full moon. It's a farm. There's a toddler in residence. It's just nothing out of the ordinary. Just too much ordinary. Is I think how I phrased it. Too many ordinary things.
Yeah. So, what besides toddlers cutting teeth? What's going on the farm over in your neck of the woods?
Fortunately, not much right now farm wise. Our sheep are all in breeding groups, so I did notice last night with the full moon, our maiden flock has some muddy butts. So and then one was looking a little thin. So I'm probably if I can get all my marbles lined up today, gonna take out some of the lye soaked feed. So for those of you who aren't on our Facebook board, there's a couple of YouTubes on it now. The main one is by, and forgive me for what I'm about to say, but this is the actual name of the account, Poopa's Farm, because Poopa is apparently a term of endearment for a grandfather figure. So he made a video about you mix, like, it's not much, it's like a quarter of a teaspoon or less of lye, then you put it in water, and then you put that gallon of water with that little bit of lye into your feed for your ruminants. And what that does is it alkalizes everything, and then the animals eat it, and the parasites can't live in an alkaline environment. So by increasing the animal's alkalinity, you make the host inhospitable to parasites, and either they die or they leave or something like that. So I have gotten crucified on social media for mentioning it, but a few of us brave souls have decided to not let the Karens get to us and just do it anyway. And I have been really pleased with the results. I've had sheep that really struggle with parasites not struggle, like their Fibonacci scores get really, really good when I give them that feed. Now, it doesn't work on Coccidea very well, which, runny butts may actually be Coccidea, so I got to do something different with that, but it's a good idea to go ahead and zap the rest of the beasties too while you're there.
Well, it's nice that you can mix it all in your feed, so if you can just put it in your whole flock kind of deal.
Right. Yeah, and then the Shepherdess Grace from Texas, she actually has a really good coccidia treatment on her farm store that I've used before too. So I'll probably get some of that. I can't remember the name of it, but we'll try to link it in the show notes because it is really good. It's more expensive than Corid, but I've only had to administer it once, and then the flock's clear for that year. And it's been a couple of years since I've given it to them. Now, the thing with the lye treatment or any parasite treatment that I've learned is when you administer any kind of parasite treatment, be it herbal, lye, chemical, homeopathy doesn't have this dynamic, but homeopathy is a whole different operating system on how it affects your animal. But any other method of giving a wormer actually shuts off the sheep's ability to produce B12. So we don't produce our own B12. We get that from our food, but sheep can produce a little bit of their own B12 in their ruminants. And so when you give them any kind of parasite treatment, it shuts that off. So the people who have given the lye treatment, if they're in an area who they have to feed a lot of hay and the sheep aren't on pasture because the green grass has a ton of B12, they have noticed some thiamine deficiencies, which you can get around by either having free choice kelp out for your flock or you just administer a B complex to them. So I don't have any issues just having free choice kelp out for my sheep. I know some people are concerned about the copper amounts in the kelp, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not concerned. My animals seem to actually get pretty mad at me if I don't have a natural source of copper out for them. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, all that being said, it's some kind of weird super moon the 1st of January. So I'm gonna go mix up some live feed and give that to at least the maidens because they're the ones looking a little rough. The breeding groups actually all look pretty good. The rams are looking a little raggedy at this point, but that's to be
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a
But the
little
girls
too interested in the girls.
all look nice and sleek and plump, and a couple are poochy. So I'm half wondering if I'm gonna have a couple who got settled on one estrus cycle and then others who settled on later estrus cycles, which is actually a good thing because I think I've got 15 girls this year in breeding groups, which is the largest I've ever done before. And I have 4 jugs and I need to make more. But if I don't have to make 15 jugs, that would be great.
Great.
So I'm planning on possibly selling a couple of the ewes once they've lambed and I see who's doing the best and whatnot. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't fully intend to be milking all 15 girls the entire season. Especially most of the Gulf Coast are just going to raise their own young, and I won't milk them this year because I have so many dairy crosses. But we do have, I think, at least 4, if not more, dairy crosses that'll be first time fresheners. So those are the ones I'm gonna be looking at to see kind of who does.
Who's your top performers and
Yeah. Yeah.
udder confirmation? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That. So I actually have a Border Leicester Gulf Coast cross. So
Okay.
nothing remotely approaching dairy, but her mom was a purebred Border Leicester and she was one of my best milkers. So I'm
Okay.
curious. I'm curious what she's gonna do. So if she does well, I think I'll still keep her and try to cross her to an East Frisian Ram at some point, just because why not make an alphabet soup of sheep genes and see what they do? So
Right. Right. Absolutely.
that's the other. We're in this for the sheep milk, but we're also kind of in it just to be like, what is
The
this
experimentals.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's what's going on with me. What's going on with you?
So I think I've mentioned it before. I have decided this year, this is my first year that I will not be lambing in February and March. Mother Nature taught me a valuable lesson last year, and message was
Don't
heard
do it.
and received. So I'm not lambing in the dead of winter anymore unless I have a real need to, which I don't ever foresee that
Yeah.
happening again in the future. So I broke my sheep out into breeding groups middle of December. So I took some ewes down for LAI. So they were kind of like in their own separate breeding group.
Well, just
And
for
then,
new kids in the classroom, what is LAI? I know what it is, but maybe someone else
okay,
doesn't.
yeah, that's a good point. LAI is laparoscopic artificial insemination for those who don't know or new to sheep but have a different animal background. Sheep are a little more complicated as far as reproduction goes
Mhm,
versus horses, cattle, pigs, and even goats to a certain extent.
mhm,
To artificial inseminate a ewe, it's actually a small surgical procedure. Most folks that do it are typically veterinarians. I'm trained in how to do it, but I just don't have all the equipment yet. So it's, on my bucket list of things to have because then I can do the procedure myself. So I took 6 ewes down and used the purebred East Frisian semen that I purchased last summer
mhm.
on 6 girls. So, and as we sit right now, I think there's only 1 or 2 that it looks like they didn't take. So after you do the LAI, because it's not 100% effective, LAI is also, the success rate isn't as high as like it is with pigs, horses, and cattle. Sheep are a lot more complicated because of the folds in their cervix. So that's why they're currently
Okay.
not eligible to be inseminated transcervical. So with goats, there are some people that are doing transcervical artificial insemination using a speculum, and they're having moderate success. So I bet with time for them that technique, the success rate's going to go up.
Yeah. And for any of you who are new listeners, just please understand if you've stumbled onto our podcast because you saw the title of the episode and were like, oh, I'm just curious what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
This is predominantly a dairy shepherding podcast. And what that means in real life is we have to very explicitly and repeatedly name all of the embarrassing anatomical parts. It's basically a midwife show
Yeah.
with sheep.
So that's a good point. I don't hesitate normally or think anything of it because I
I
worked in
don't.
the reproduction world for so
Yeah.
long and working in veterinary medicine for so long that I'm just like, it's just like,
It's nice to talk shop, but also just remember we're weird by doing this. So anyway,
right, right. It's just a normal part of our life now. So yeah, so after you do the laparoscopic artificial insemination,
wait, no, go back. So most animals that are artificially inseminated, you can go transdermal.
yes.
But sheep, you because I've actually wondered that too because
Hmm.
we have jerseys. Our mother cow won't take with AI at this point, but she's older,
Okay.
and jerseys do have a less dependable success rate with AI sometime. And by AI again, we're talking artificial insemination, not the
Hmm.
super robots that are going to take over the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so but so we've had to use a bull with her, just
Okay.
because she's a very subtle. When she goes into heat, it's very subtle. Like she doesn't give very many signs of her getting into heat, and I think
Hmm.
that's more the issue than anything else. So, with our heifer, though, I mean, she just came out of heat, and boy, howdy, it was very obvious she
You
would bring.
knew.
We knew there was no doubt she wanted herself a man. But
Hmm.
so I've been asked, why can't you just artificially inseminate sheep? And
Hmm.
so I had kind of just assumed and said it like I knew it, so I didn't look like an idiot, that it was kind of the same thing as with the cows, that you really can't tell as obviously that they're in heat. But then I also am
Yeah,
like,
no.
I'm also trying to be an honest person and say, but I don't really know. So that's interesting to find out. It's actually because of their structure.
Hmm.
Their
Their
point of
anatomy.
entry is to, I guess there's too many folds in the skin, so
Yes.
you as the person administering the semen wouldn't know if you've gotten it in the right spot because there's too many
Hmm.
pockets. And so
Too
you
many.
have
Yeah.
to, okay, so you have to make an incision in their abdomen so you know exactly where you're putting the goods, so that
Yes.
there's a higher chance
You.
of deception.
Yeah. So when you're doing LAI, you make the incision and then you use tools and you're injecting the semen directly into the uterine horns. So you're getting the semen as close as possible to where the eggs are going to be
So would
dropped
that
and hopefully be fertilized.
so it just would that be like the fallopian tubes on a woman, the uterine horns?
No, it would be just short of the fallopian tubes. So basically, because normally you're using frozen semen, but
Yeah.
you could use fresh semen as well to do it. But because you don't have as much semen that's going into the uterus to hopefully, fertilize however many eggs are going to be dropped. You're just trying to give yourself and those eggs like the best opportunity and chance to be fertilized.
Gotcha.
So and then the reason why you can't AI sheep like we can cattle, horses, and pigs
Hmm.
is because of how many folds are in the cervix.
Hmm.
So typically in sheep, there's like, if I remember correctly, 5 to 7 folds.
Oh,
And
okay.
so with goats, you can't even get the pipette rod all the way into the uterus. Your goal is to get it past the first 3
Hmm.
cervical rings and then deposit the semen when you're
Hmm.
doing it transcervically.
And sheep have almost double
It's
the amount of those.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
So it's just for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Nobody's mastered that technique. I feel like maybe someday they will. I mean,
Yeah.
with pigs especially, I don't know. So I don't recommend Googling this on
Don't.
a employer's device if you're interested.
If you're
Use your
curious.
own device if you're curious. But if you really are curious, I do suggest Googling what a pig artificial insemination pipette looks like. It
Yeah.
almost looks like a medieval device, not gonna lie, because they have a corkscrew cervix, and so the pipette,
Yeah.
some of them there's like 3 different types. We're really going back into my college days. It's
Yeah.
been almost 16 years ago that I graduated, so
Okay.
I've
Pop
not
quiz.
lived with pigs for
Share
a
with the
long time.
class.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So after you go through the laparoscopic artificial insemination procedure, you wait so many weeks before you then I put those ewes out then with what I call my cleanup rams. And that's just because I don't live close enough to my vet to ultrasound, see who, took, who didn't, and then try again. So I then broke my sheep out into breeding groups, and my rams, I put marking harnesses on, and I do have them in 2 different groups. I also use 2 different chalks because, God forbid somebody were to get out and get in the pen they're not supposed to be in. I would at least know, like, who's your daddy kind of deal. But I really like marking harnesses because every time I go out and do chores, I check everybody's butts. And if there's, chalk color on any of the girls' butts, I write down that date in my phone because I usually always have my phone on me. And that gives me a really good idea of when they're going to lamb. On top of, keeping an eye on them when they're getting close, like checking udders, checking the looseness of the muscles in their hindquarters. I really like marking harnesses. The first year I had sheep and last year I did not use them. And last year I kicked myself in the butt for not using them. It wasn't even that I didn't have the chalk. It was just, I just mentally had so much stuff going on. I just broke everyone into breeding groups. Well, when lammy time came, I was like, this is awful. Like, I don't care. Like, what is going on in the future? I am always going to use breeding harnesses on my boys because it really does make my life that much easier. And so you change the chalk every couple of weeks. And so it also kind of lets you know, like, hey, this ewe, she got, marked her first cycle, essentially. She got re-chalked on her second cycle. So she clearly didn't settle the first time. Does she have something going on? Do I, need to leave these 2 together for potentially a third cycle? And, if she were to get re-chalked again, it's like, hey, maybe I need to have a conversation with my vet to figure out what we got going on here and why she's not settling when she's being bred. So I am very pro breeding harnesses. They're relatively inexpensive, and the replacement chalk is like $5 a chalk. You can get it from Premier One. I have both the leather version and the 100% nylon version. I like them both equally well. I don't feel like one does better versus the other.
I haven't used breeding harnesses yet. I mean, this is the largest group we've ever bred, and this is the most. We've never used 3 rams before. I think the most we've used is 2 rams. We've done a dairy cross and then a Gulf Coast in the past. But I mean, we've only done that 1 year. Most years we just the first couple of years we put everyone with a Gulf Coast ram. Just because we just didn't have access to any kind of good dairy cross ram. And I will say I do like the Gulf Coast dairy crosses. But our favorite ram died, and then the other purebred Gulf Coast ram we had, I don't know what was going on with his genes, but his offspring just didn't get the memo that they were supposed to be super hardy. So, and the udders on his daughters were just horrible. So, which, is to be expected with a primitive breed like that. I mean, they're not going to always turn out really great udders. But the ram we liked, I mean, his daughters had gorgeous udders, great attachment, nice shape. The teats you could handle them, that kind of stuff. And then he went and died. Like we came out and he was just dead on the ground, and we're like, well, that sucks. So, but we are using one of his sons this year, and he's not a purebred Gulf Coast. He's half dairy, half Gulf Coast. But his 2 sisters have been bred, and they have lovely udders, really good milk production. They do have the Gulf Coast trait of drying up relatively quicker than the other dairies, but when they're in milk, I mean, they're giving up, closer to a liter per day if their feed is right. So, so short amount of time of lactation, but amazing teats, really nice udders, and good amount and fair cream content too. So anyway, I'm excited to see what he's throwing. He's in with our Tunis East Frisian crosses, so we'll have good crop of Tunis Gulf Coast, East Frisian mutts. And that I think seems to kind of be where we're going to put our focus. And then I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
to bring in an East Frisian ram maybe this year and kind of keep those primitive slash dairy genes going because
Yep.
I don't know that I really envy those of you who can more focus on like the purebred dairy lines, but my concern is that until my husband retires, I don't know that we will ever be in a place where we know his schedule will stay predictable and what they tell us is going to be. Like
Yeah.
he will come home and be like, yeah, my schedule's now completely different for the next 3 months. And then 2 weeks later, he'll be like, oh, psych, it changed again.
Yeah.
And so we just have found we can get away with still doing things like dairying and all the homesteading things. We just have to have really hardy stock. And so like we do have jerseys, but they're on the lower end of like the lower producers. They're not winning any prizes. Because I mean we'll have to switch from morning milking to night milking with no warning whatsoever. And if you
Mm-hmm.
have, if you have a Jersey who's putting out 6 gallons a day, that is begging for mastitis versus where she's only giving 1.5 to 2 gallons a day. She's not super comfortable and she kind of glares at us. And if you have cows, they give the ultimate guilt trip. You will not believe. But she's not getting sick right away. And so with our sheep, it's kind of been the same thing too. Like the higher the producer, the more flexibility you have to give up in order to get that high production. So um
Mm-hmm.
I think for us we're gonna have to kind of stick with crossbreeds for the time being. I would like to at some point look into more purebreds or breeding up programs, but I don't know that that's going to be the case for us for a little bit. So, and I think I have a fairly good market for the crossbreeds with smaller scale homesteaders, but
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Hey guys, I just wanted to interrupt quick to give a shout out to our sponsor, the North America Dairy Sheep Association. NATSA is open to any sheep breed or crossed used for milking purposes. NATSA supports dairy shepherds and is elevating dairy standards in sheep in America. NATSA now offers a Milk Star program, has sanctioned dairy sheep shows, and is now offering a breed up program. You can become a member or get more information by going to the website www.northamericadairysheep.org, or you can email the association at northamericadairysheep@gmail.com. We are so thankful to NATSA for sponsoring this podcast and helping bring more resources to the dairy sheep community. Stay tuned for future podcast episodes where we talk to NATSA board members about what NATSA is trying to accomplish in America for the dairy sheep community. Well, so I was just thinking that is a perfect segue. We haven't started talking about our topic yet.
oh gosh, we're like halfway through our podcast. We didn't start on the topic.
Yeah. So with the Gulf Coast natives, I know that they are naturally horned, which leads
Well,
us
some
to
are.
okay, so some. So
Yep.
are they kind of like Icelandics where some of
Yeah.
them are and some of them are pulled? Okay. So that leads us right into our topic about pulled sheep versus unpulled, so no horns versus horns. Are you like pro like one side versus the other?
So I like horns actually. I mean, I
Okay.
really like horns. Now, ironically, the ram who was our favorite I was talking about and his son, they're both pulled. Like they have no horns
Okay.
whatsoever. But some other sons of that exact same ram would have the beautiful like bighorn sheep, huge curly
Really?
horns,
Okay.
and they were bred to pulled ewes too. So I guess that means the horn gene is recessive with Gulf Coast.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, but I mean, when it shows up, it's there. Now, the rams will typically have much larger horns. The ewes don't get those curly, bighorn sheep things where they come out on the sides. The ewes typically just have little, kind of like goat horns on the top of their heads that just kind of flow backwards a little bit. Like,
Okay.
for the nerds in the audience, like Loki's horns from Adventures. So with the ewes, it doesn't really affect them getting into the stanchion. It just, because it's on top of their heads, like they're not coming to the sides. Now some of them will kind of splay to the sides a little bit, but you typically can trim those. So I like the horns. Now what I don't like is when they throw skers, which are like quasi pseudo baby horns. So the actual horns seem to be kind of well attached to the skull. Actually, they are attached to the skull. With the skers, it's like there's a little teeny tiny horn bud that grows out of the skull, but then the sker is not attached to anything, and so it gets knocked off very easily. But there's blood vessels in there, so if they knock off their sker, it looks,
it's a bloody mess.
it's an absolute bloody mess. It gets in their eyes, and then, you know, if there's any kind of predators around, that's just a calling card of, hey, look, blood, vulnerable, hurt creature, come investigate. So I don't like the skers. Unfortunately, there's not any way that I'm aware of to screen or predict or control who's going to have horns, who's going to be pulled, who's going to have skers. It's just you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And either you cull the skers or you don't, and you just have some kind of blood staunching something in your kit whenever you walk out.
You just have to manage it appropriately.
Yeah. So I like the horns, and too, where we're in the South, what I've read in my research is the horns are their cooling device. So it helps them regulate temperature a little bit better. You know, the more woo-woo people in the books that I've read say it also helps them predict the weather and all that gobbledygook, which I don't know how they know that or how you would verify that. But I have been able to tell with the sheep with horns, if I put my hand over their horns in the summer, you can feel heat radiating off those horns that's not radiating off their bodies. And the ones that are pulled are just hot, trying to stay in shade. The ones with horns will put like their heads in the shade, but their bodies can sometimes stay out into the sunlight.
Okay.
And then, you know, the other reason I really the ones with horns are a little feistier, and it's
Of
just,
course they are.
yeah. Which always leads people to be like, oh no, well, does that mean that they're like, I don't want to get hurt with the horns? And I'm like, I have only ever been touched, not touched by a horn twice in the almost 6 years that I've had sheep. And one time it was very intentional. It was our first shearing. It was our herd queen. She was very pregnant, and we had fasted her for shearing. And she came up, walked straight to my kneecap, because I was sitting down, put her head down, and just lightly headbutted me. And that was it. And like, and she did it on her horn. Like, it wasn't on her forehead where the bone is really, really thick. It was on her horn. So it actually it did not hurt in the slightest. All it was is her saying, hey, you forgot food. I know you didn't mean to be a jerk, but you have been. Where's the food, lady? And I was like, after shearing, then I'll give you all the food. Well, not all the food you want, but you will get food, I promise. So that was the main time I ever was, even approached by a horn. The other time was with that same ewe. She was also pregnant at the time, and they had run out of water. And so I was walking in with the buckets, and she was so thirsty. It was just a frenzy. So at that point, I did get hurt because she was jostling, and her horn did, like, where her head kind of reared back, it clipped me in the shin, and it did hurt like the absolute dickens. But I will say it still hurt less than when she took her hoof and jammed it into my very underprotected foot later on that summer, because I was stupid and walked out with like flip-flops or something, because that's what a smart person does, is walk out to the sheep paddock and flip-flop. So, I did get a bruise at that point, but I mean, it wasn't gouged. I didn't go to the doctor or anything like that. I just kind of bopped her on the nose. She looked at me like, what is your problem? So I've never been hurt by the horns. They don't use their horns as any kind of like weapon of aggression, because if a sheep's gonna fight, if a ram uses his horns, it's typically during rut. It's at another ram, establish dominance, and it's just part of the jostling process. And then they may rear their head backs and try to like gouge him on the tip, but that's not their first method of fighting. Their first method of fighting is to like ram them either in the head, or if they're really, really PO'd, they'll go for the ribs. And so, and you can avoid that, because once a ram commits to charging, he doesn't like change direction. Like you'll see him pawing, and he puts his head down, and then he charges. And all you have to do is step out of the way and let him crash. Or if you're really, really feeling froggy, you can grab him by the chin and jerk his head up, and he gets whiplash and goes, oh, I'm in the submissive pose. And on you go. The ewes really don't use their horns at all for aggression. I've never had them get caught in the milking stanchion. I have had them get caught on permanent fencing or cattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that is a concern which we have decided to make more people mad, because that's apparently what I just do in agriculture, is piss people off. Um, Built the wrong breed of sheep. I don't give them the right medications. I don't do anything right. I do it all wrong. And then on the homesteading side, I make people mad too, because my husband's in emergency services and we don't do all the right, hashtags and whatever. So in that vein, we're trying to move away from electronet and moving paddocks, and we're going to try to start establishing stationary paddocks, just because with the
Okay.
fact that it's a scheduling thing, we
It would make
really
your life easier.
Right. Well, so with rotational grazing, which is if you're in the homesteading community, that is the only way to raise any kind of ruminants. And if you disagree, you're wrong. That's just law. Also, law is,
I'll just
if we're
sit here and smile.
right. Well, another law is first you get poultry and then you get goats. Like, that's the rule. I don't know who made up the rule. Again, we didn't do that. We were going to get goats. We got sheep instead. So
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously no legalism whatsoever in the homesteading community or judgment or anything negative like that. So let's just all be clear. But so rotational grazing is a big deal, and I totally agree with why. I think it's wonderful. It's a beautiful system. I think it's based off nature. I know Joel Salatin, he knows me, and we've actually talked about this of, like, the ideal is rotational grazing. Semicolon with cows, you move them once a day and they're fine. You let the ground rest for 30 days and you can put them back on and it's fine. With sheep, if you're going to do rotational grazing, you have to move them twice a day, especially if they're dairy, and you have to let that ground rest for 60 days because of their susceptibility to the parasites. So to do rotational grazing with sheep, especially of the dairy persuasion, it is a far more intense endeavor than if you're doing it for cows or dairy cows. Combined with the fact that we are on the tippy top of an Appalachian foothill, it is all heavy red clay. And once we hit July and we hit our summer drought, we have to take mallets or rocks out to the pasture to hammer those stakes into the ground. And it takes like minutes per stake to pull it up. Like, it's not an easy peasy, just throw it up and throw it down. So what we've decided, is, so we can't move our groups around more than a week at a time. So it doesn't make sense to keep investing in electronet. It makes more sense if they're going to be in a spot for at least a week, just go ahead and make an established paddock. And then I can just walk out, open the gate, and they move. And we just manage parasites with other methods like the light treatment or homeopathy or probiotics and that kind of stuff. Anyway, all that being said, as we establish the fences, I will have to monitor the sheep with the horns more, because I have had sheep get caught in cattle panels or the woven wire and that kind of stuff. And the only way to get them out was to cut the fence itself and then wire it back on, which was pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So, I think if you have the option and you are really invested and committed to the electronet and rotational grazing, or, a hot electrified enclosure, I think the horned sheep will do fine, because they're not going to get close enough to that fencing to really have an issue, because it's electrified, so they're going to avoid it. But if it's a cold fence, they've decided they've eaten all of the clover and whatever, and they want the clover on the other side of the fence, then even if they can't put their whole face in, if they just get like their nose in and then they move because a fly buzzes or something and they get the tip of their horns caught in it, they can still get stuck in the fence. So, and then, by the time you find them, they're hot and panicked, and they're not trying to fight you, but they are fighting you, and you tend to cuss, and then your neighbor stops by because he thinks you're having a heart attack or a stroke, and then you get to meet your neighbor, but it's very awkward. So, not that actually happens. So there's my spiel on horn. What's yours?
So I am not pro horn, mostly because of management reasons. I don't have any concerns of like them using the horns as a weapon with me or anything like that. For all the reasons you said, like if my rams are normally pretty gentle. Now, with that being said, like, I never trust a ram. I always know where they're at. But if they're going to be like asserting dominance or trying to change the pecking order amongst the other rams, usually, like you said, it's head on, like ramming each other. But with that said, I So this is where the some people might get upset. So I do rotational grazing. However, my sheep are not out rotationally grazing like 24/7. So they get to
Right.
go out during the day, and then I I run them back. Usually, if they're running, it's because they're choosing to run
Right.
because they know there's grain in the barn. So that's their
Right.
incentive to go where they're supposed to go when I
Well, you just
let
made
them
more
out to
people
move
mad. You
them.
feed them grain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to keep my girls up in condition and lactation,
Right.
they need those extra inputs
Yeah.
because we are not grazing lush alfalfa fields. So I do the electric net for when I am rotationally grazing, but my permanent fencing fixture at my farm is woven wire. And for the reasons that you just discussed, the sheep, so it's basically a dry lot woven wire area. So at that point, like they have really nice hay and water and they can get in and out of the barn if they want to. And it doesn't matter how nice the hay is in the
Mm-hmm.
feeder, especially in the middle of summertime before the sun has scorched our grass off. It's usually the lambs, because their heads are small enough, will
Mm-hmm.
stick their head through that woven wire fence and graze all the grass as far as they can on the other side of the fence. And I have had lambs get themselves stuck with no horns. So I could only
Mm-hmm.
imagine like if they had horns, like, and
Yeah.
I've had to, like you, I've had to cut the fence before too to get their heads out because I'm like, how did you even get your head in
Yeah, I
here?
know. And like you look at where they're at, and you're like, I'm no expert on physics, but how how did you do that?
How? Yeah.
How? Like
How?
you
Yeah.
don't even you don't fit, but you're like your body
Mm-hmm.
is bigger on both sides, and even if that's accounting for because of swelling, still you shouldn't fit in that little spot. And
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So for that reason, that and the type of feeders I use.
Mhm.
So I predominantly feed round bales now that I have a
Mhm.
tractor. So I have that luxury.
Yeah, keep which we do feed our cows round bells, and this will make every farmer in the audience cringe. So we have our Mennonite vendor. They bring the round bells on their semi trailer. They roll it
Mm-hmm.
off, and then Kyle and I go and we'll take down one of the cattle panel fences, and he and I will roll those suckers into the spot they're supposed to go across half an acre, and then tip it on its side. And the cows
Mm-hmm.
get, and the whole time we're huffing and puffing and like biting each other's face off. And at the end of it, we're like, who needs a gym? Look at these biceps right here. And that's me talking in that masculine voice. And he's just trying to catch his breath. But yeah. So again, if there's any rich person who's bored, Whoopsie Daisy Farm could use a tractor if anyone wants to just plunk that into our arsenal. That'd be great. I digress.
Yeah. No, I've lived that life. That's why I have said tractor.
Tractor, yeah.
Uh, but so the feeders I use, I'm trying to think that the company used to be called Marweld, but they have since gone through a name change. So the feeders themselves are manufactured in Canada. So
Okay.
I purchased mine before all of the tariffs were in place, and that's part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I purchased more than what I needed, because I
Mm-hmm.
figured if I got in a bind, I could just sell whatever I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really need.
Yeah.
But so mine have bars across, so it's like a cradle that the round
Mm-hmm.
bale just sits in, and on the length of the feeder,
Mm-hmm.
there's enough bars in between, like there's big wide flat bars, but
Mm-hmm.
there's then some smaller rods in between each of those flat bars, so nobody
Mm-hmm.
can like shove their head in the feeder. But my problem is on the ends there's also bars,
Mm-hmm.
there's square tubing there, but they're set apart just far enough that even my
Mm-hmm.
mature ewes can stick their head in there to eat hay, which is fine because they don't have horns. If they had
Right.
horns,
Right.
it would be a disaster for me. And for what I paid for these feeders, I would be nauseous if I had to go out there with like a grinder to cut the bars out to get somebody's
Oh,
head out of the feeder.
yeah.
Yeah. And prior to that, I had kind of did like what you just mentioned with you and Kyle, except I did have a skid steer at the time to put the round bales out, but I had basically taken calf panels
Mm-hmm.
and modeled it after Premier One has these really nice metal panels with like head sections cut out for sheep, like 4 different spots per panel. And then basically like you clip them together. And I think you need like 5 panels, if I remember correctly, for a 4x5 round bale. That's what I started off with. And it worked well for, I made it like in late summer, early fall. It worked really well for that winter. But because the gauge of the wire of the calf panel is not as heavy duty construction as what Premier Ones is, those were like bent and mangled because they're like pushing in as hard as they can to get to the round bale. And same thing, like if they had horns, they might have been able to like finagle their head in to get to the hay, but it seems like they get amnesia and they forget how to finagle it back out. You know what I mean? Like
the dynamic of like, back when we were teenagers and went to the mall and shopped, because now if we're buying anything, it's fancy equipment like you're just talking about. We're not going to the mall to shop for knickknacks. Anyway, you go to the mall and there's like the mood rings, whatever. And of course you want to like be thinner than you actually are. So you get a smaller mood ring than is actually rational and you put it on. And then you're like, oh, crap, it's too tight, it's stuck. And then you like panic and you can't get the ring off. I think it's kind of that dynamic with the sheep because it's like, take a deep breath, tell your finger to get smaller again, pull that sucker off, and then walk away.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, sheep don't do that. At least I don't have any sheep that do that.
No, mine don't either. I just, but you think at them like, okay, just breathe. Breathe for a second. I'm here to help. If you kill me and yourself, you still will be stuck. So let's just all work together. And they don't, but you think it at them. But
Right. Yeah. No, it's usually just sheer willpower and profanity that helps you get them out.
I was such a good, docile, like, if I was mad, I'd be like, oh, gosh, something like that, or golly gee willikers. And then we got ducks, and I started into the PG level of cuss words. And then by the time the cows showed up, I'm just like, now I get emails, can we come see your farm and watch a work day and maybe help? I'm like, no, you may not. Whatever illusions you have about me, I want those to stay firmly intact. You don't want to hear the words we say, and by the, not starting to talk and parrot and all stuff like that. And so now we're having to do the, okay, mommy was really bad. Don't ever say what mommy just said. Mommy needs a spanking, and she'll go give herself one shortly, but don't ever say that.
Yes. Yeah, having worked in emergency veterinary medicine, and working in vet med for over 11 years, typically can cuss like a sailor. So not to give anybody any false illusions either about how I'm just like this really calm-natured person all the time. That's not the case. When I get peeved with my critters, like they know it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I am, I think we talked about on the last episode, we are all a bit of nerds. And so, my husband gotten hardcore into Outlander. We've read the books a couple of times and, watched the TV series. And that's either making some of you go, yes, and the other half of you die inside a little bit, depending on how you think. But, the main character is this British World War II nurse who travels back in time to Jacobite Scotland, in case you don't know. And there's this delicious warrior who has red hair and an attitude to match hers, and it's great. But so she's this proper English lady from the higher classes, but then she was on the front lines of World War II, and was a combat nurse. So, she's having to do minor surgeries just to keep folks alive. And so it's just, then she comes back into modern society and then goes back in time. And so she's always shocking people because she looks beautiful, she's intelligent, and then she'll be doing this complex surgery and just turning the air blue. With all, and the men in the room are just going, like, we're blushing a little bit. How did you put those words together? Do you actually know what that means? And she's like, shut up, hand me the gauze. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay. So anyway, we always laugh at those scenes because Kyle's like, it's you. Like, you're such a prim and proper lady. And then something happens. And I'm just looking at you going, do you know what those words mean? Do you know what those idiom combinations actually mean? I'm like, I wasn't thinking about it. I was just like, what is the most angriest word I can cobble together and throw out there to help my blood pressure stabilize? But again, this is a completely off-topic bunny trail, but just so you all know, shepherds cuss. Okay, that's the main point of it, and sheep will elicit that from time to time. But anyway, so I think back to the topic, horns. I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer per se. I know a lot of us
No.
want there to be right and wrong in so many areas of our lives, but really,
Hmm.
I really love the horns. I can't remember if I said this, but we call the horns nature's handlebars. Like if,
Yeah, I've heard other people say that too,
yeah,
which
so
there
like
would
if,
definitely be times that
yeah,
those would come in handy.
yeah, so like the ones with horns are typically the ones with attitude. And I mean, yes, you can. There's shepherd's crooks. It is actually a bit of a skill to learn how to use the shepherd's crook, so you're not just
Yes.
getting your arm pulled out of your socket. And you can grab their hooves, but really you've got to like bend down and not get kicked or stepped on to grab their hooves if you're going to grab them. So if they have horns, typically you can kind of go in their blind spot and you look at another sheep over to the side, and then you just shoot your hand out and grab their horn, and then they're stuck, and then you jump on top of them and grab the other horn, and then your inner child makes a sound kind of like a motorcycle a little bit out loud. Not that Kyle and I have ever done that. And we have already at 2.5 started telling Nat, you may not get into the ram paddock without mom
Yeah,
and daddy telling you can, because that's where most of the horned sheep are. So, and he knows what
are
I'm Liz. And so we're like, if we see you in there, you will regret it.
spankings.
Yeah, we don't gentle parent around here. There's no
Yeah,
gentle
no,
parenting around here.
no. My
So,
daughter is far too strong-willed to just be like, "Now, don't do that."
do you think that was a
Sometimes
wise choice?
yeah, no. Sometimes I'm like, if you don't stop, mommy's
Yeah.
gonna blister your hind end, which I
Yeah.
never have. But she just looks at me and goes, "Okay,"
Yeah.
and stops
Yeah.
doing what
Well,
she's doing.
honestly, Kyle and I have said from the get go, like, there's a lot of ways for kids to die on a farm. We don't have times
Yeah,
to pander to your feelings right now. Like, my job, number one, is to keep you alive. Your feelings comes later.
yeah,
So there's
yes.
another little, that could be a whole
Hmm.
podcast for
Oh,
me.
absolutely. Well, think of it this way. If you look at like folks that I would say is probably like in like our grandparents'
Yeah.
age
Yeah.
bracket or older, if they grew up on a farm, a lot of them are like missing fingers. Some of them
Yeah.
are missing entire hands, or
Yeah. Or
and
have
they're
big
typically
scars,
they're farming like farming
accidents.
accidents.
Yeah.
And if you ask them about them, like they will tell you what happened, and
Yeah.
usually they were fairly young when it happened.
Yeah. Well, and I mean the Amish, because we have a very large Amish and Mennonite community in our area,
Hmm.
and all the women have burn scars on their arms, and they are not pro gentle parenting in the slightest. I mean, they will straight up,
Hmm.
I mean, stay in front of you to their kid. You push me, and I will smack you. Like, you will get corporal punishment. Now,
Hmm.
there's some extremists in that camp, obviously, but point being
Yeah.
that they live really close to life and death, and it's just
Hmm.
understood. If you're stupid, they're not evolutionists, but there are some points
Yeah.
to that methodology that have validity.
Hmm.
So the stupid ones die. So be smart and be safe, and when you're a child you don't have that awareness, so we will educate you, and
Right.
you will submit to the education, because I don't want to bury you today.
Right.
So
Right.
and
Yes.
getting back to our actual podcast topic, I do appreciate, and I've talked about this in season 1, left, right, and sideways. A sheep, typically you're not going to have a huge hospital bill with children and sheep, typically. Now, obviously there's
Correct.
exceptions. It's more the equipment that you have in order to work with the
Yeah.
sheep that the danger lies, because everything has sharp edges or is metal or whatever. So
Hmm. Or has hydraulics on it, so it could
right.
easily crush whatever.
Right. Or, I
Hmm.
mean, tractors, even. I mean, or round bales. I mean,
Hmm.
people have been killed by hay, which is crazy if you come from a city to
Hmm.
think that a hay bale can kill a person. But, if they're stacked wrong and they roll or fall
Hmm.
just right. I mean, I know a guy whose brother was killed by a hay bale. I was like,
Yeah. Hmm.
death by hay bale was probably not in his bingo card.
Want to know more about dairy sheep? Did you know that I write books on the topic? There is my big book, which is published by Sawdust Publishing and is available on my website or Amazon and sawdustpublishing.com. In this volume, The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep, you will find everything I wished I knew when I first started raising dairy sheep. I feature other dairy shepherds and go into detail on topics like different breeds for milking, parasite management, milk sharing with lambs, how to set your flock up for the best lambing and therefore milking season possible, and I briefly discuss digestion and nutrition of sheep. Since writing this book, folks have asked me questions about more nuanced topics, so I have begun writing ebooks that are topic specific that you can purchase on my website and receive as an instant download and print at your convenience. Currently we have Bringing Your New Sheep Home, which explains in detail our step-by-step method of introducing new dairy sheep onto your homestead and getting them used to you as their shepherd. Since there are currently no dairy-specific hair breed sheep available, dairy shepherds will have to shear their sheep annually and then decide what to do with their wool. Wool has a lot of misconceptions surrounding it, and I want to help shepherds understand that it is a commodity and not a burden. So I wrote my other ebook, 5 Uses of Wool on the Homestead, which is designed to give you practical ideas on how to utilize this amazing product around your homestead the second you shear it off your sheep. The ebooks are only available on my website at whoopsiedaisyfarm.com.
All that to say, be aware, be smart, spank your kids. It's fine.
Yes, it's okay. We won't judge you for it.
No. But anyway, so I like horns, semicolon, if you need to have a permanent fencing structure, just be aware if you do the horns, you need to make sure that you're checking your flock every day, at least twice a day, because if they get caught in the morning and it's high summer, I mean, they could be dead by the afternoon because sheep will die of fright. Like, there can be nothing medically wrong with them. They can just die of fright. So if they are stuck and a vulture shadow passes over them and they go, oh no, it's going to attack me, they can just die of fright. So, I think if you have electronet, I've never experienced or heard of anything super horrible happening with the electronet as long as it's hot enough. If it's not hot enough,
Yeah,
it doesn't
it's
matter if
gotta
they
be
have
hot.
horns. Yeah, if it's not hot enough, it doesn't matter if they have horns. Like, they can die and hang themselves
Yes.
if they're pulled as pulled can be. So, again, like with so many things with sheep, there's not a right or wrong, but you have to be aware of what you can do, what you want to do, what your infrastructure and setup is, what your goals are. If you really love the beautiful rack of horns, and I mean, there's a whole market for sheep skulls now where you can get a couple $100 per skull. So, I mean, that is a viable farming enterprise, is selling sheep bones, apparently.
Yeah.
But just you need to know what you're getting yourself into, because if you don't, then it can get sad and expensive very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know I say it's new, it's not new, because I worked at a horse repro farm where we had it. But there's a type of field fencing where, and maybe it's advertised as like mare and foal, but basically like the holes are so small, like even foals can't get their hooves through the fence. Because that's kind of the reason nowadays why just general like field woven wires kind of frowned upon with horse people, because if God forbid they were kicking at another horse or whatever, like they have been known to put their leg through the fence, and then when they pull it back, because they can pull it back, they just full lay
skin themselves.
they're like, and I have seen horses that have done that, and they all survived, but they had some gnarly proud flesh, so scarring on that back leg. So, and I think our friend Amy, who's also on the board. So I would really like to get her on the podcast, and I think we could talk her into it. She also has some horned sheep on top of the dairies. I think she has that fencing, so she could also speak to that, and she does rotational grazing and kind of thing, just to kind of like get her input and have her weigh in on it. But so it's just mostly think of what your goals are, what your plans are,
And it can change too. I mean, that's the thing that I don't think a lot of us realize when we go into it, is we think when we start this, if we decide we're going to sell eggs and pork chops and have sheep milk on the side, like, we have to get chickens and pigs and sheep now, and that's what we're going to have on our farm until the day we die. And that is absolutely so not true. I mean, we started off with chickens and guard geese and a couple of ducks because I like the eggs, and then pigs, and then rabbits, and then sheep, and then cows, and now we're like, okay, no chickens at all. Those are going away because Kyle apparently is allergic to chicken. So we're gonna do ducks and quail, and we found out by accident we really love goose meat. So the geese are no longer just guard geese. It's delicious, and we don't get a lot of goose meat in our area, and when it does come, it's like horrifically expensive. Like, turkey's got nothing on how much geese is. It might be cheaper in your area because apparently all the geese farms are up in like your neck of the woods. So,
well, most people up here, they just hunt wild goose.
Oh, Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, point being, like we've just had to pivot. Like we want to be dairy sufficient. Like I don't want to buy any dairy from anyone else because I don't know what they're feeding their animals, and what the animal eats actually directly affects me and Kyle and our digestive tract. So if I know what I'm feeding my sheep and I'm processing
Then you
that
don't
milk,
have to worry about it.
I don't have to worry about it, and I know we can digest it, and then we can enjoy cheese, which is a big deal for me. So,
Absolutely.
and eggs are a very important source of protein for all of us, and it's really hit and miss where if you're going to have access to the good eggs. And like I said, Kyle can't do chicken, so we need to make sure we have duck and quail eggs available because that's a huge source of protein for his grab and go food. So all that being said, we're not raising pork. We're not raising chickens. We might be raising geese for meat instead of just guard geese, and that might change too in a couple. We're not having rabbits anymore. We're mainly focusing on the sheep and the cows, and then poultry as a side benefit. I don't even have a garden. Like I don't even grow a tomato plant. I had 2 basil plants
No.
this last year. Everyone else has gardens, and they do it better than me. I will pay them for tomatoes if I need them. So
Yeah,
I think
support your local farmer.
right, exactly. So if you love horns and you get them and then you realize this was not a good life choice, sell them to someone else and get a different breed of sheep.
Yeah.
Or conversely, you may start off with polled sheep and go, these are boring. I want the adventures that horns bring, and you switch it or crossbreed or whatever. Anyway, there's my spiel about don't get locked into one thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Pivoting.
Mhm.
That's just something that people need to do more in life in general, but especially when
Yeah.
it comes to having sheep on the farm. Like there's no shame in changing things. It took my barn setup that I have. I think I have it about dialed in for the space that I'm in right now. It took 4 seasons of milking. So 4 years of having sheep before like I have finally figured out a really good flow. And it's because I just like had it one way and thought I really liked it. Part of that problem was my flock kept expanding, but I had to keep pivoting to accommodate, having more sheep, and by having more sheep, having more lambs, and like how to handle it. So
Yeah. We change
pivoting.
we change our milking setup, I think, every year, just because, like you said, I mean, it's the flock grows, or we find out there's a leak in the roof where we have to stand.
Yeah.
We just have to
So
move
you
it.
have to adjust. Yeah.
So yeah, adjusting is good.
Yeah. Well, we are just over an hour, so we should probably wrap this up. So
Yep.
it was great talking to you, and
Yeah.
hopefully folks don't mind our bunny trails, but I think it's usually like circles back to sheep.
It does. Just give us a few minutes. We'll come back.
So, all right. Well, it was great talking to you. I'll
You
see
do
you
it.
next time.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Woolly Way podcast.
We hope you enjoyed our episode and have gleaned at least one tip you can implement in your flock right away. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button, and if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. This helps others find our podcast so that they can enjoy learning about dairy sheep along with you. The Woolly Way podcast is a production of Whoopsie Daisy Farm in Crafty Fox Acres. For updates and information about our show, follow us on Facebook or Instagram.
Subscribe to our YouTube and email list and look us up at whoopsiedaisyfarm.com to find both. Have a particular guest you'd like us to host or a topic you'd like us to cover? Fill out our contact form on our website or shoot us an email at whoopsiedaisyfarm@gmail.com. See you next time.